Robin Miller presents Roger Penske, Rick Mears, Parnelli Jones, Johnny Rutherford, and Bobby Unser. In the Bobby Unser Roast.
This is the Bobby Unser Roast. Honey, all these people are here for me. They love me. That's so wonderful. No, actually, they're going to make fun of you for the next hour and a half, but that's okay. All right. Now, everybody has a Bobby Unser story. And some we can tell in public, some we can't. Tonight, we can tell anything. Rick and I were talking the other day, and Rick goes, what are the boundaries here? I said, there are no boundaries. It's Bobby Unser, so let it fly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take turns telling Bobby Unser stories, and then I've got a couple props I'll bring up later that'll probably illustrate what a sick human being he really is, if you already didn't know. So, Unser, are you surprised?
Am I surprised? Man, I mean, I got off that elevator and I can't believe it. This is wow.
Yeah, well, and here's the other thing. You're not allowed to speak until this whole thing's over because these people got to be home before midnight. So you don't get to rebut. When this whole thing's over, you get to talk, but not until then. So, Shunk, what kind of whiskey we got for him?
He's drinking
rum and root beer. Albuquerque's finest. Rum and root beer. Big Machine vodka. All right, now, there's one person, you know, we all have a burden to bear. There's one person in this whole world that we can blame for Bobby Unser, and that's 1963 Indy 500 winner Parnelli Jones, because if he hadn't have brought him here, we'd have never seen Bobby Unser. So, Rufus, lead us off and give us your best Bobby Unser story, because I'm sure he tried to borrow money from you the first 20 minutes he knew you.
Well, you know, I got tired of carrying him about the first 3 years he was here, you know.
Because he only made one lap the first 2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 laps, I think.
2 laps, yeah.
Or so.
Oh, yeah. And you talked to Andy Granatelli to put him in the Novi.
Well, yeah, but the story behind that is, I said, you go down and talk to, he would talk him into driving the Novi, and he did pretty good in it, so I said, you go down there and tell Andy that you want $25,000 to drive the car.
In 1963.
Yeah.
25 grand.
And Bobby come back with his head hung down, he got $1,000.
This man, John Rutherford, were you a rookie in 1963, Mr. Rutherford? So you started with, so you tell us your favorite Bobby Unser story that's, you know, not real mean, but kind of truthful.
I'm not sure I have any Bobby Unser stories. I have some clever ones. We were running at Trenton back in this. When did you start driving for Gurney? What year? You remember? Well, never mind.
3 years before.
Anyway, we're running at Trenton, and he's sitting in his car, and there's not many of the crew around it. And I was walking by, and I saw him. His head was kind of bobbing like he was talking, you know. And so we had two-way radios. That was early in the days, and the frequencies we usually had somebody else on our frequency, so it was kind of different. But anyway, I come back by, and he's still sitting in the car, you know, but his head bobbing, and I just stepped over the guardrail and walked over to his car and knelt down, and I said, hey, I said, is this how you're beating us and setting all those fast times, just talking to yourself out here? And he laughed, said, no, I've got a cab company in Trenton on my frequency, and they want to know what's going on out here.
And you probably talked back to him, right? All right. So 1979 RP, did you hire? So Roger Penske hires Bobby Unser in 1979. I'm working for the Indianapolis Star. I read a column. I said, well, we've just witnessed Armageddon because we got Roger Penske hiring Bobby Unser. This thing won't last 3 weeks because of his ego and RP, the way he runs a tight ship. This thing will never work. Well, of course, it worked pretty good. They won the 1981 Indy 500. So, RP, when you negotiated with the world's cheapest human being, did you have to bleed him, or did he?
No, I told him if he'd take a note from me, we won, and then I'd pay him. I think it's how we started out. But, you know, when I think about Bobby and you go back, I've got a whole bunch of stories here, so we can stay here all night if you want to. I can talk about it.
These people.
You know, I wrote them down. I didn't know how fancy this would be, so I wrote them down. But, you know, with Bobby, I talked about technology. He was the guy that said, just put the radiators on the front wing. We'll get some more downforce. And that's where he started with us. And you can imagine we got this buttoned-up group from the UK building these great cars, and then he comes around. But I remember we talked about ground effects. You remember that ground effect started in 80, 81. And Bobby did you know this? He had the first wind tunnel. Did you know that? It was out in Albuquerque in his garage with a hairdryer. That was how he started the wind tunnel. So he takes all the credit for downforce, the big wings, that's what it was. But then we get into 81 or 80, or 79, I guess it was 80, and we had the PC7, which I thought he might drive, but he wanted the new car. He said, you know, Rick, that new car isn't as good as last year's car, so I'll drive it, and you take last year's car. What he didn't know was Mears was going to win the race, and he was going to blow up. So he took the wrong thing. But that was typical. I remember one day Rick said, what kind of springs do you have in that car? He said, I got 1400s and 11s. Of course, we go over and check it out. He's got 1000s and 800. He was always a great team. Wasn't he a great team player with you? I mean, he was the best. The greatest story is, I think it's when I fired him. We go out to Phoenix, right? We go out to Phoenix. We got this brand new Penske car. I mean, it is it's a home run. He gets in it, the steering wheel isn't right, the pedals aren't right, the windshield's wrong. He goes out and makes a few laps pretty quick. We put Mears in the thing, no seat belt, I don't think, nothing, gets in and blows him off. Is that when I fired you? I said, hell, I couldn't afford you to start with. Yeah. And then he wanted to take me in his airplane from one race to another. Now, he wasn't an IFR pilot at all. You get in and he drives down and flies down the highways. That's how he got to the races. So this guy was really something. And the biggest thing about his fans was, he used to go up to the fence and smile at everybody. Why did he always have his raincoat on? Huh? People were throwing beer at you, weren't they? That was Bobby.
Well, hey, RP. Well, the other thing was, when I was like 19 or 20, I used to watch Unser. His car would be in 1,000 pieces in Gasoline Alley, and he's got his driver's suit on. I thought, God, he's not going to be able to run today. Why has he got his driver's suit on? Well, there was a reason. He's been married 6 times. He's a 3-time Indy winner and a 6-time loser at love, ladies and gentlemen. And our hero would be at the fence, and there'd be a little 15-year-old. Hi, honey, what's your name? I'm Bobby Unser. Listen, did your mom bring you here? Oh, really? Is she here? Oh, bastard. Well, have her come down here. Okay, Rick Mears, you got to tell that one great story to start with. Rick Mears, 4-time Indy winner.
Thank you. They were talking about me doing this. I said, what? Tell stories. I don't know any of the stories because they were all done behind my back. So I didn't know anything that was going on. Now, really, Bobby was a great teammate. He really was. Because he didn't want to tell me anything, and I didn't want to ask him anything. So we got along perfect. I had my own ego, too, right? But he wouldn't tell me anything about the car, but he was always trying to teach me life lessons.
That's right.
So one day, this was, he was a big help. Nobody really, I don't know how many know, but he got me my second IndyCar ride with Teddy Yip. And he was a big help in all that, putting all that together. Got me my second ride. And before I started driving for Roger, he'd take me and run me around racetracks and, point things out, what to do, what not to do. And he was really a big help, as long as I was in a 4-year-old car. Then that all stopped when we got to the newer cars. But one of the life lessons that he was telling me in those early days, I think it was Atlanta, one of the places we were going in. And so I'm riding in with him in a rental car, and we get to the first gate, and the guy says, okay, let me see your passes, right? And Bobby just flipped out. He went up one side of this guy, down the other, and just just chewed his ass out something terrible. And I thought, man, this Bobby's really mad. I'm sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, right? He's really upset. So finally the guy says, okay, go, go on in. So we start driving off, and Bobby turns around, looks at me, and grins and says, now see, that's what you do the first time through. They remember you the rest of the weekend.
Oh, okay, in case you didn't know, like RP said, Unser he was the king of the wind tunnel. It had a shoebox and a hairdryer. He also invented ground effects, air, the internal combustion engine, the gurney flap, positive camber, negative camber, stagger, pendulum understeer, water. Is there anything he didn't invent, JR?
I don't know. He claims all of that, you know. But the other little thing on Bobby, he's a pretty good pilot. I've ridden with him. Did you have a Bonanza or was it a Debonair? Bonanza? Yes. We were here in Indianapolis and during the summer months, and it was a sprint car race down at Salem, Indiana. And Bobby said, let's go. I got my airplane here. It was out at Ware Cook, and so we go out there and get in his plane, take off, and fly up. And there's a little runway right beside the racetrack in Salem. So we up and land, and we climb up the bank, and I guess, were we just going to stand up there at the guardrail and watch the cars go by at 120? Anyway, so we get there, and we watch the racing, and we finally go back over the fence and down to the airplane and get in and fire it up. He gets ready. We turn around, and we take off, and we get maybe 20, 25 minutes in the air, headed back to Indianapolis, and the thing started banging, you know, and it had the throw over yoke in it. You know, you unlock it and throw it over, and before it started doing that, Bobby had switched it over in front of me, and I was flying the airplane. I had a pilot's license too, so we're flying along, and it starts doing that, and Bobby was kind of had his laid back, and he sat up straight, said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't know." And I put the yoke right back in front of him. It's your airplane now, Bobby.
To think that A.J. Foyt had a pilot's license, Lloyd Ruby, Rufus, Uncle Bobby. Did anybody pass their test? Seriously, did any?
I got to the
JR did.
I was in that group.
Foyt flunked four written tests, and then I asked him once. I said, "How did you get your license?" He goes, "It's in Texas. Nobody gave a shit. I just flew whenever I felt it." The friendly skies of Texas. Yeah, that'd be good. All right, where's our? This is too good a story to wait to the next segment. This would be a turkey. Now, you guys know the turkey story, don't you? Okay. Back in the old days when there were 3 weeks of practice at Indy, look at him shaking his head. Your wife didn't know you then. It's okay. She was 12 years old. Relax. So, he stayed at the Howard Johnson out on Crawfordsville Road. Well, it was 3 weeks of practice, and there was a lot of rain sometimes. So every now and then, they'd get rained out. So he would walk to the nearby Kroger's, which was like, half a mile away. He'd get a cart, and he'd get a turkey, and he'd start trolling. And he'd start looking for a pretty girl. And he'd finally found one. He'd zero in on him and say, "Hi, Bobby Unser, Indy 500 driver. How are you? I love your city. Yes, wonderful, great. And what's your name? Yeah, well, that's what. Listen, I love turkey, but I stay at Howard Johnson's and I don't have an oven. Do you think we could go to your house and bake this turkey?" He got laid about 7 times. I swear to God. It worked. How does that happen? Son, I just want to do a little turkey. And we're going to give this to charity, Unser, because the turkey story is one of the greatest of all time. Son, I love turkeys. All right, Mr. Penske, let him have it.
Well, you have sponsors on your car, and, we obviously were tied in with Mobil and at that time and Pennzoil. And, Bobby, we went to Atlanta. You remember this, Rick? We go to Atlanta, and I didn't realize that he had talked the mechanics to take the Pennzoil out of the gearbox and put Amsoil in it, because in his garage at home he had a full garage full of Amsoil, batteries and everything else. So I think he was just going to get a little bit extra money on signature on that. So of course I didn't know anything about it. Gets in the race, and about halfway through the thing burns up, and he comes in and the gearbox is completely burned out. I say, what the hell happened here? Well, he talked Laurie Garish, I think Clive, to put this stuff in the gearbox. Thought it was going to be faster, but it caught you. Remember that?
Yeah, but also Earl's the one that squealed.
Oh, Earl, I know. But how about the time, I know we were at Milwaukee or at Ontario, and Pat Patrick had this new big van, and he had the first, I think, downforce car. Bobby goes up at night, gets our guys to go up at night, cut the lock off, get inside the trailer, take pictures of the car, and then he sent them to Patrick, so Patrick had them on his desk the next couple of days. Remember that? Huh? You don't remember that? And then one night, the guy in the garage, he would never give anybody a setup. It was his, and the guys, he would say, you know something, son? You're not going fast enough to use my setup. That's what he'd tell all the guys. You're not going fast enough to use my setup. And I remember one night, I said to the guys, look, if you don't think you know what Bobby's setup is, we'll go out to the garage, out to Gasoline Alley in those wooden garages. We'll open it up tonight, and we'll check his car out. I think we did that 3 times. You never knew that, did we? Just to be sure that you're telling us the truth. Can you imagine that? I mean, poor Mears here trying to get ahead, and you say, oh, you won't give him the setup. But he was something. The drive for us, and I have to say this, I've had a lot of guys drive. Unser could win a race in a car that wasn't very good. A lot of guys could win races in the best cars. But, you know, over the years, I remember the California 500 one time. There was no guy could win that with that car he had, and he won it. But Bobby, lots of wins. And I don't think Mario Andretti ever knew how you blend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You remember that? How do you blend? You remember that time he said he didn't have any radio. He goes out of the pits, passes all the cars, pulls into line, right? And we win the race. Now, so in the old days, they put it up, well, it's official the next morning. Well, Ted Koppel, ABC, right? They got this thing on ABC Sports. Look at Unser going up there, illegal, comes in, wins the race. So the next morning, they took the damn race away from us. I said, you got to be kidding. So we spent, I think it was 5 months. And is Mario here? I don't think he's here. But I tell you, he's pissed off, I'm sure, about this one. But anyhow, we spent 5 months. And, you know, I said, you call a strike after the baseball game? You call a holding penalty after an end of a football game? Absolutely not. I didn't know Voiles at that time. I would have hired him. But I probably couldn't afford him either. But anyhow, so we keep going through this. So I finally got the tape of the circuit, the spotters around the Speedway. And the tape said that car number 12 or 11, whatever it was, blended improperly. And they talked about it on the network. So we had judges from the University of Louisville, we had all these people. And I said, listen, you had the information. This was about 50 or 60 laps into the race. You could have called it, given us a penalty, and we'd have gone on. But at the end of the day, it's interesting that the judges felt that they had the information, they didn't call it. You can't call it from a TV camera on Saturday night after the race. And I remember I was sitting in New York at a meeting, and I got a phone call. They said, you won the race. Man, I just about fell on the floor. But they didn't call it, said looking good or not looking good. But you remember that? Oh, yes. Did you ever send Mario part of the money? Pardon? You send Mario part of the prize money you got? You didn't send him any, did you?
No.
But I'll tell you, that was a load. That was a load to carry him through that one. But, you know, it's interesting. But, Bobby, you know, your driver and, you know, having your family drive for us and Al, and certainly Al Jr. has been amazing. And, you know, part of our success, a lot of our success comes from your tenacity. Sometimes you're a bully and sometimes you're a great guy. But thank you very much for what you've done.
Don't be that nice to him. Okay, Rocket, take over.
Well, that's great. You know, I've heard Bobby say it. We've been at functions from time to time over the years, you know, and if unfortunately he gets up ahead of me, I don't have to spend as much time up afterwards. But So, yeah, I taught that Mears everything he knows. And then I'd usually get up and say, well, you know what? Bobby did teach me a lot. He taught me more than he knows. He taught me how to sort through the bullshit, read between the lines. He taught me all kinds of things he has no idea he taught me. I mean, here's a perfect example. And it was actually kind of fun doing this. And I forget, we were at a road course somewhere, and I was trying to get a little more bite off the corner. So I said, guys, I want to drop the rear springs a little bit. So it's just a small amount, 50 pounds, whatever it was. And go out and run the car. It's practice. Feels better off the corner, a little better bite. So I come in, and and as soon as I come in and stop, and Bobby's leaning down in the car listening, And the guy said, well, how's it? I said, yeah, it's better. It's better. Leave it. He goes, there ain't no way. There ain't a man alive that can feel a 50-pound spring change. I thought, okay, I'm going the right direction.
Yeah, baby. That's the best. All right, Rufus. All right, well, let's talk.
We all know Bobby cheated every chance he got, and I called him on that penalty.
Wait a minute.
Right after it happened.
Well, let's talk about the pacer lights, speaking of cheating. And let's talk about the only guy at the Speedway, when the race was over, the pacer lights, one of USAC's USAC is, of course, the greatest four-letter word in racing. These guys are the biggest fucking idiots that ever came down the pike. They've ruined racing for 55 years. They've had the best racing, the worst officiating. So, and these guys all know, too, because they all had to run there. So, the pacer lights, our hero made about 50 pit stops that day because he figured he could run 170 between pacer lights and gain up. Al Unser's got a 3/4 of a lap lead, and he looks in the rearview mirror, and Bobby Unser's behind him. How the hell? So when the race is over, one guy at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway walked down to our hero and said, I know what you were doing. How long did it take you to figure that out, Rufus?
Not very long, because, he had his brother, Al, he had him upset as much as he could all the time. I had to live through that. But Bobby was great for cheating, and we all knew that, and you just tried to catch him all the time.
So when
the best one was, we went to a race out in Ascot. We coming back in the airplane, and we was too late, so we stopped in Las Vegas, started spending the night there and drinking and everything, and next day we got up and left, and we got about halfway to Albuquerque, and the engine started sputtering. Again. And I'm in the back seat, or I'm in the right seat, and I had a few lessons. So Bobby told me, he says, here, you fly the thing while I take a nap. So, and Roger McCluskey's sitting in the back seat, and we're flying about halfway there, and all of a sudden the engine started, and the prop stopped. And we're out over the mountains. And Bobby. And I thought Roger McCluskey was going to tear the back of that airplane up. Anyway, we made it there, but one thing I wanted to say about him is cheating. Aside from that, we had to rent a car, and he practically tore it up, took the mirror off, threw it off, and everything else. And anyway, so Hertz, he was driving a Hertz rent-a-car, and Hertz, shortly after that, gave him a lifetime Avis card. But anyway, we've had a lot of great experiences, and Bobby had in the restaurant in Albuquerque, the little Mexican restaurant right by his shop. He eats there 3 times a day, save money. But we've had some good times, but having Al Unser as my driver against Bobby was chaos all the time. So anyway, we had a lot of friends. But Bobby's been a great friend of mine, and has from the beginning. And after I got him his ride, he made it 2 days, I think. Spun it twice on the first lap. So it took him a while to get with it. So.
All right. You guys probably read the letter from Hertz that Dear Mr. Unser, it's been brought to our attention you were once a famous race car driver who was a substantial customer of Hertz in the late 60s. A quick check of our records shows that not only were you a big customer, you were also a big liability. Our accounting department reports between 1965 and 1968, you either disabled, wrecked, or totaled 17 Hertz rental cars in the United States and one in Canada which has never been found. Digging deeper, I learned someone in our home office finally became aware of your nefarious treatment of our rental cars, and you and another gentleman named Al Unser, presumably a relative, and both of you were banned from renting a car for 5 years. Not just Hertz, but also Avis. I have no idea if you've ever been incarcerated or sued, but clearly you are a criminal element who thinks he's above the law because you apparently are a big deal once a year in Indianapolis. Enclosed is a bill for your past damages. We estimate at $289,000 in 60s money. We expect a check from you in the next 30 days or litigation will be necessary. Respectively, Chase Hamilton, CEO of Hertz Company. P.S. If you could enclose an autograph photo for my grandson, your payment, we'd be greatly appreciated. Now, we got Tim Cendrick, Laurie Garish, Clive. These guys have worked for Penske forever. Uncle Bobby was found by Parnelli Jones. Rutherford has been one of his rivals forever. Has he ever bought you guys a meal? Has Bobby Unser ever bought anybody in this room a meal? I don't care. McDonald's, anywhere.
This was.
Bought us a meal. His mom used to cook for us right at the Speedway, not him. You remember that?
Well, yeah, Mom Unser chili, honey. What'd you say?
Well, one of Bobby's life lessons to me early on, he says, when you leave the house, if you've got $500 in your pocket, you come back with $1,000 worth of receipts.
All right, speaking of receipts, so I get this little thing called bone cancer a few months ago, and RP calls me 2 or 3 times and says, I'll fly to the Mayo Clinic. Voiles calls me, Shunk's taking care of stuff, Rutherford calls me, Mario calls me, Uncle Bobby calls me. And, I mean, there was, what can you say? Parnelli called, and everybody's like, Rick called there, it's like, hey, what do you need? You need money? And they're like, no, I'm good. So Uncle Bobby calls, he says, listen, I got money, I got clothes, what do you need? He goes, I said, oh, I'm good, Unser, I'm fine, everything's good. He goes, well, listen, if you need anything, you just know, you just go charge it, whatever you got to do, I'll send you the cash. Just be sure and get some receipts. From the Mayo Clinic, a receipt? I mean, I called Mario and I said, well, here's a new one, brother. I got a tear in my eye. Look at him, he's laughing. Yeah, well, what the hell. All right, Parnelli is also, this is what's unbelievable to me, because if you ever read the Bobby Unser story, one of the greatest works of fiction in the history of, oh my God, it's like 14 pages in, you're like, we should probably go pray to this guy on Sunday. Jesus. So, son, that's you. So, the great thing about Unser is he was one of the most confident drivers of all time, a.k.a. cocky, whatever. But when Parnelli said, why don't you come run Indy, he said, I don't think I'm good enough. This is the only time in his whole life that Bobby Unser said, I'm not sure I'm good enough to run the Indy 500, which after you get to know him for a while, you're like, that never came out of his mouth. Oh, yes, it did, didn't it, Rufus? Why is that?
I don't know. He said that, but that was the only time I received humble.
Only time? I asked Gordon Johncock once, I said, Johncock, we did a thing once in Michigan, and when Shunk was working in Michigan, and he says, we're just passing the mic around, and I said, hey, Gordy, what were your early impressions of Bobby Unser? And he said, he goes, I was at Winchester once, and Unser was running the low groove about 80 miles an hour slower than everybody, so Don Shepard said, go down there and ask Gordon Johncock how to get around this place. So Johncock went down, and Uncle Bobby got up on the track, and next thing you know, he made the feature. So I said to Johncock, I said, that's pretty neat that you helped him. And Johncock goes, yeah, it's the last time he ever listened to anybody. Which is true. Mr. Penske, any other, you guys got along pretty well. He claims that you just had a handshake deal. This is what he said. A handshake deal, and then you finally got him a contract.
Well, it's always a handshake with you, wasn't it, Bobby?
Yes, it was.
You said, I don't need a contract. I'm going to show you how good I am. And I think that's how we started. Yeah, oh, yes, you did. Oh, yes, you did. Oh, yes, you did. Well, You know, Dario, this business is something. When you got a guy that's standing on the gas, you put up with a lot of shit, don't you? Remember that. You know, you'll be a car owner someday. You'll find out exactly. Parnelli and I know, right? When you got these guys, but no, listen, Bobby, it was amazing because he would never tell you what was in his car. He always had the mechanics. You know, we try to have one team. Well, when you're with Bobby, you always have two or three. He's got his, and the rest of the team's everybody else's. But no, Bobby, we've had some fun, didn't we?
Oh,
We won some races.
More fun than ever.
But you became, I thought Jeff Ferris was the engineer and the designer of our car. Bobby fired him. You know, we actually designed the car, had it built. He wins the race. He fires him. He didn't think he knew anything about it. Remember that? You fired my damn engineer. And finally, Mears talked me into bringing him back. But you imagine that? Am I right, Rick? That happened every day.
Well, Paul Page is here. A nice ovation for Mr. Page. Now, he had to sit in a TV booth with this maniac for several years. And of course, what happened to Sam Posey probably shouldn't happen to anybody because, what, Paul, 20 times a race? Sam, how many times have you been to, that's a turbo fire, honey. That's not a fire. Jesus Christ. No, you're wrong again. He corrected him, what, 7,000 times a race?
Oh, at least that. But the beautiful thing about Bobby is they'd get talking and Sam would make a point. And then Bobby'd say, well, Sam, that's not exactly the way it is. And then he would keep talking. And he would talk his way around, so at the end of it, Bobby said exactly what Sam said, only now Bobby had said it, so it's right.
Were you more traffic cop than announcer sometimes?
I was the scaredest man at the racetrack most of the time. Yeah, it was just lean back and let the two of them go. There was one time in the booth, though, I have a beautiful 500 ring here that my wife gave me, and Bobby always adjusts everything, as you have already heard. And so he adjusted his television monitor, which is a big, huge, the old-fashioned with the vacuum tube and everything. And, of course, he adjusted it out of any ability to project a picture whatsoever. So he lowered his little stool down, and he kind of slid in alongside of me so he could watch my monitor. I didn't realize he was there. And he was about to say something that we weren't supposed to say at that point in the race, and I spun around. Right in the face with my ring. Looked like a puppy when he looked over at me. It was so good. You know this, too. That man right there, all those Pikes Peak wins, yep, scared to death of heights. Just scared to death. Can you imagine going up Pikes Peak scared of heights? So I never would exploit something like that, would I? Wouldn't be me. No. So one year at Long Beach, we never had booths there. I don't think they liked us much, Bobby. But we had a scissors lift. And I didn't show it to Bobby until race day and said, we're going to get up on this and we'll do the race. He said, oh, Father, I don't know. So we got up there, and I cranked it up a little bit. That's enough. I said, Bobby, we're like 11 feet off the ground. Going to go more. No, this is good, Father. I took it up 75 feet. Because it had guide wires to go that. I don't think he ever got over being mad at me at doing that. So.
Tell him what you did.
Which one?
You got up there and started shaking that thing.
I wouldn't do that. Come on. Sir.
I told him I was going to kill him.
Okay, so is it true that the producer or director or whoever said, you got to quit, told Unser, you got to quit correcting Sam Posey. We don't want that anymore, which, of course, the TV audience loved because that made it. And then they put him out in turn 2 to try and silence him, did they not? They put him on top of the suites thinking he'd fall off or something had happened to him, and they'd be done with him.
They did that, but we got a report back race day. He was up there, and some pictures were sent to us. He had like a buffet up there, a little bar, some ladies to make sure he was all properly served, and everything. So when Bobby does it, well, as you've heard from the others, he knows how to do it. By the way, that airplane, when he would fly from Albuquerque to the cabin up at Chama, you're supposed to follow the proper air procedures up there. Not him. He'd go right across the corner of the White Sands Proving Ground. I can't tell you how many times I believe jets were scrambled to see who that was, and then they finally just, it's Bobby Unser going across there once again.
Oh, that was Area 51.
Area 51. All right. Thanks, Pete. We'll come back to you in the next segment. This gentleman, Tim Coffeen, you guys know, mechanic in IndyCar racing forever. This man was scarred for life when he was 10 years old by Robert Unser, and he's going to explain in his voice and in Bobby's voice what happened that long time ago when he was 10 years old.
I grew up in Indianapolis. I became bitten by the race bug like a lot of kids do in Indy when you're kids. And my dad was a member of a group, Irish group, that met monthly. And they'd send a flyer out and say what was going to happen. Well, the month of May comes, they got a race driver coming with a movie, and I begged my dad. It was an adult group, and I begged my dad, and he says, I'll take you. So I was 10, I read the Marhofer hot dog cards and read the newspapers. I didn't know anything about cars, nothing. I was just a fan. And they showed the movie, and then Bobby started taking questions, and I was about the third person he called on. And I said, Mr. Unser, how come you got only 159 cubic inches and Dan Gurney gets 305? He said, son, stand up. Oh my God, I felt like an ant. He had 50 adults looking at me. And he said, son, do I really have to explain to you the difference between 159 cubic inch turbocharged double overhead camshaft Offenhauser versus a 305 Gurney Westlake rocker arm motor? He says, son, you need to put your thinking cap on. Son, you can sit down. Tough love.
And this is great. This is what happens. So Shunk grew up idolizing Bobby Unser, and they became best buddies. Fino loves Parnelli and Bobby Unser. He's all the same era. So a couple months ago, Timmy goes and spends 2 days with Unser, which felt like 2 years maybe. I don't know. But, son, this is my wingman. He can drink whiskey. Boy, can he drink.
I want a quick one. I worked for a long time, 23 years for Newman Haas Racing, and we raced in Vancouver in the 90s. It was a good venue for us. It was big, and IndyCar racing was big. We stayed at this lovely Victorian hotel called the Georgian Court, and Vancouver's a seaport town. So you get a lot of people coming in, flying in, and then they get on the boats and go up to Alaska. So you work till 8 or 9 at night, changing engines, doing your work, and you walk back to the hotel. And Bobby's working ABC, but he also worked for Canadian Broadcasting, so he's up there with CBC. And I saw him in the lobby the day before at the Georgian Court. Well, we get back from the track on Saturday night, the night before the race. There's 3 charter buses out front, and there's people lined out the front door, and the Georgian Court's a nice place, but it only had 1 elevator. So we're waiting in line, and I noticed Bobby in the shadows over there. It was hard to tell. He had a jacket on with 3 inches Bobby Unser and his cowboy belt Bobby on the back. He was being discreet. But anyway, there's a lot of these older people waiting to get on this elevator, and the door opens up, and Bobby hip checks this old man and dives in the elevator and pushes the button and says, I'll send it right back for you. Promise.
Fino, thank you, Tim. Oh, my God. All right. That's my wingman. He loves whiskey. All right. Everybody's got one more story, and we're going to stop this first session. We'll start with Mr. Parnelli Jones, the oldest living Indy 500 winner at 84 years old. He goes, we were at dinner last night, and I said, God, that's pretty neat, Parnelli. You're 84 years old. You're going to be 85, the oldest Indy winner. He goes, I don't think so. I think Foyt lied about his driver's license. I think he's older than I am. Might be. All right, Rufus, your last. This can be a nice thing or a mean thing, either one.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know any nice things about Roger. No, I had a lot of fun with Bobby when I got a chance to go run Pikes Peak out there, and he helped me a lot to learn the hill. And of course, we had other race drivers would come out there that were IndyCar drivers and stock car drivers and stuff, and we'd always take them up the mountain. Well, he'd taken me up the mountain, and just after you leave the tree line, you're going off in a real angle like that. All you can see is sky out there. And your cars, you're in the dirt, slipping and sliding a little bit. And there's a pole there, and blue sky right behind it. All of a sudden, he'd act like he lost the car, drive the sucker right off next to the pole, and there was a road that went down there. Yeah. But anyway, so we called them customers after that when they come, you know. So I got in on that myself. And anyway, so Roger McCluskey was one of the in Pearson. Anyway, we're on Ragged Edge. Wall this side, straight off on this side. We're coming along there, and I'm driving. Bobby's sitting in the right seat, and they're in the back. And anyway, Bobby reaches over and puts his hands in front of my eyes, assuming that I can't see. Of course, he left them cracked enough that I could. So I started headed right for the edge. Of course, the back doors came open. But anyway, so they had a banquet that night, and McCluskey made an announcement. He says, "I wouldn't drive that hill on my life depended." But we had a lot of fun with things like that, and that's the thing about racing fraternity, and the fact that all of us are competitors, and we're also very good friends.
That's great. I don't have too many stories. One of the early ones before I actually got into Indy cars and off-road. Remember the desert race he came over and ran over in Vegas?
I remember that. He hit me right in the back end.
I hit him as hard as I could. He started a couple minutes ahead of me, and so this was going to be a big day for me. You know, this is before I got into the IndyCar stuff.
His brother is my teammate.
And so I thought I was bound determined. I didn't care if the car, all the car had to last was long enough to catch him. I wasn't worried about the 250 miles or the 500 miles, however long the race was. And I ran that thing as hard as I could, and I finally caught him, and I ran him down. And you're supposed to honk the horn and kind of give the guy a warning because you're racing against time, not each other. So when I got to him, I hit the horn and him at the same time. I remember he got out of the car afterward. He says, "Man," he says, I thought there was not a man alive going as fast as I was." Like I said, there was nobody going any faster than I was until I felt you hit me. But no, we've had we met at Pikes Peak early on, and Bobby was a great help, all along. And like I said, we were great. We were good teammates, and we worked well together because we didn't work together, so it worked great. I had my own ego. I didn't want to ask him. I had my pride. I didn't want to ask him anything, but he didn't want to tell me. But we got along great, and I did learn a lot from Bobby, whether it was just from watching or listening or whatever, and a lot of what not to do. And but no, we had a great time. Hell of a driver right there.
Bobby, we kidded you a lot tonight and lots of great stories, but you're going to go down in history as one of the great IndyCar drivers, one of the great 500 champions. But I think what I'd like to ask you tonight, what is the biggest victory that you had in your career as an IndyCar driver?
Well, the first one would be obviously the 68 race because it's the first one. Right. Second one would obviously be your race, 1981. At any rate, I got to say, the guy, I got to give it some compliments. I can't answer all these accusations because most of them were false. Some of them might have been a little bit true. There's no question about that. It was true what Mears did to me gets me out there in the desert in his home turf and beats the crap out of me. Then the car breaks and they leave me out there. And his brother is my teammate. I must have been 80 miles from the truck, wasn't I?
That's close in the desert race.
It's close, yeah. Wow. I didn't have.
That's walking distance.
The original question, Jesus Christ, what's the original question? Your favorite race?
The Indy 500.
Well, the first one.
68, yeah, absolutely.
Back on track. First one.
What did I say wrong that time?
The turbines. You led the most laps.
Ah,
And you were still a nice guy.
yeah. Look, and the crowd liked it.
The crowd loved it.
The crowd hated the turbines. I didn't like them either.
I didn't like it either. All right, that was good. You're going to get your chance to rebut. We don't have 4 hours. You got anything else? John Rutherford.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a mistake to give him the microphone this early. The first time I ever heard of Bobby Unser was in the Speed Sport News when it was a little newspaper. And it was before I started racing or right after, but I was interested in racing no matter what. But it was, I saw a pattern every week of the Speed Sport News. It was where Bobby had raced and got upside down. Yeah. A lot of pictures of his car upside down with him scrambling out from under it.
That
But
was you.
no. No, Bobby's a racer. You know, you can say driver, but no, he's a racer. And I've always thought a lot of him. He got in the way sometimes, but that was that was another deal. But you're a great guy, no matter what they say.
Thank you, John.
All right. We're going to take a little 10-minute break, and we're going to reload with Al Unser Jr. and Johnny Unser and some other surprises. You guys go get a drink, get some food, buy a T-shirt, tell a Bobby Unser story. We'll be back in about 10 or 15 minutes. Thanks to Roger Penske, Johnny Rutherford, Parnelli Jones, and Rick Mears.